It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the three films of May 2nd, 2008. And welcome to one of the greatest summers in movie history. In fact, truth be told, since the week I'm recording this episode, which, by the way, this is actually coming out on the third anniversary day that Time About the Movie started. So we're now 3 full years into doing this show, which is incredible to think about, since I'm closing in on 1,000 episodes at this point, and it's amazing how in 3 years I've been able to get to this mark already. So I feel like I've accomplished something. So there's at least that. But what I was trying to say is that when I was the week I'm doing this, I'm going to be doing a talking about the movies episode, talking about the best and worst movies of the last, is not this week, but I'm starting to do these 20th anniversary specials, focusing on, the best and worst movies of the decade so far, and then later on this year I'll do the best and worst movie years of the last 20 years I've been covering films. And I say this because 2008 just so happens to be the best movie year I've seen in the last 20 years. I did like a list of all these different movie years, and you want the proof of that? There you go. I took that from Box Office Mojo's list of the 200 movies for each of those years, and yeah, when I look at this list, 2008 definitely had the most movies that I remember enjoying a lot of, and it was a groundbreaking year. It had a great summer, too, with a lot of really good movies, and specifically, it had one major game changer. And why am I building this up here? I mean, we're already past the mark where I usually would have shown the trailer by now, but no, we're getting to the major game changer that kind of set the tone for what the next 17 years now, since we're in 25, what the next 17 years would be in terms of where studios would go to try to copy the success of something. This is the movie that literally began one of the most notable trends of recent memory, and that, like I said, it's a game changer. This movie is the definition of a game changer.
Mr. Stark, you've been called the Da Vinci of our time. What do you say to that?
Absolutely ridiculous. I don't paint.
What do you say to your other nickname, the Merchant of Death?
That's not bad.
They say the best weapon is one you never have to fire. I prefer the weapon you only need to fire once. That's how Dad did it. That's how America does it. And it's worked out pretty well so far. To peace.
Is it cool if I take a picture with you?
Yes, it's very cool. I don't want to see this on your MySpace page. Please, no gang signs. No, throw it up. I'm kidding.
You have till tomorrow to assemble my missile.
I should be dead already. Unless it was for a reason. I just finally know what I have to do.
That doesn't look like a missile. What are you building, Stark?
I'm working on something big.
That film is, of course, Iron Man. Iron Man, of course, was the feature film that essentially kicked off a certain universe that I'll delve more into at the end of this thing. But let's talk about the movie itself, because they don't really. This movie doesn't really. The focal point of the universe that this starts off doesn't happen until the very end here. So I'll save that for the end. But But in a contemporized version of the origin story of Iron Man, you have Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr., who's attacked and critically wounded in an ambush in Afghanistan and is imprisoned in a cave by the terrorist group the Ten Rings, who want Tony to build a copy of Stark's company's latest project, the Jericho missile. A fellow Captain Yinsen, played by Sean Taub, creates a device that keeps Tony alive, and they're forced to build the missile. Yinsen helps Stark escape the group from using an arc reactor to turn Stark into an armored superhero to break out of the cave, and is rescued by his buddy James Rhodes, played in this movie by Terrence Howard, and is brought back to America where Secretary Pepper Potts, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, and the company's manager Obadiah Stane, played by Jeff Bridges, is waiting. Seeing how his company's weapons are being used for evil, Stark makes the controversial decision for his company to not make any more weapons. After this happens, he uses his expertise to expand on the suit of armor that got him out of the caves to become the superhero Iron Man. When he realizes that Stane has been sending the company's weapons to the same terrorist group that imprisoned him, and they plan on using them on Yinsen's village. Stark also realizes that Obadiah Stane may be more of a threat than he believes. But, you can kind of expect that when you look at Jeff Bridges in this movie. It's just like, yeah, this guy clearly isn't going to turn into a bad guy. Get out of here with that. This is directed by Jon Favreau, who at that point was starting to become more of a prolific director. He had made films like Maid. He broke out with Elf, which was a massive hit for him. Zathura was a film that was not received the best financially, but it was still a pretty good movie overall. But he never had tackled a big project at this point like Iron Man. So, of course, there was a lot of skepticism to see if Favreau could make the jump to a bigger project like this. And also, this is a film that's relying heavily on Robert Downey Jr., who wasn't really the big box office draw that he was back in the day at this point, or what he eventually will become now. I mean, he was in that comeback stage of his career where, like, he had those years where, of course, he was dealing with all the personal issues and all that. And then as the 2000s got going, started with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and then continuing on after that, his career started to rebound a little bit here. So he was still not the reliable draw that I think he is nowadays, but he was surrounded by all this talent across the board here. And I think a movie like Batman Begins proved that, you know, you put in a relative unknown in a big role like this, and you fill him around there with a bunch of awards caliber actors. I mean, Batman Begins had Morgan Freeman, Gary Oldman, Liam Neeson. I mean, Tom Wilkinson, Katie Holmes, like a lot of recognizable talent all around him. Like, you can make a movie work, especially if you have a good movie to work with here. And this was bold also for Marvel, because this was the first movie they self-financed on their own. Paramount was only the distributor on the movie, so there was a lot of pressure on them for this movie to deliver on those merits alone, but much more, as we'll delve into in just a little bit here. But regardless of that, it all paid off in the end, because, yeah, this is still one of the best superhero movies ever made. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is perfectly cast as Tony Stark. He is such a good Tony Stark in this movie. He brings that character to life because he's living through a lot of what Tony Stark goes through in this movie, and he can easily relate to him, this character, because he falls into the same characteristics as Stark did, and that's more touched on in Iron Man 2, which I don't think it's as good as this one here, but I gotta give it credit for doing that at least. But we'll delve more into that when we get to 2010. But the rest of the cast is very good. Terrence Howard's pretty good as Rhodes, and it really would have been interesting to see what would have happened if Rhodey had continued to be played by Howard. But Howard, of course, you know, I think there was contract disputes going on that caused Iron Man 2 to go with Don Cheadle, and that decision has worked out pretty well for that movie. But still would have been interesting to see what Terrence Howard could have brought to the role of Rhodes had he continued on playing that role. Gwyneth Paltrow's really good as Pepper Potts. She isn't the typical damsel in distress that you would think a movie like this would have. And she does actually help Tony stay ahead of his enemies. And that's really something that I really appreciated about this movie, was that she wasn't written as a stock damsel in distress character. She contributes to the movie in general, and she contributes to the story. Jeff Bridges, I think, is great as Obadiah Stane. I mean, he really is a very fun villain in this movie. And yeah, like I said, he's an obvious villain, but at times he is really fun. He has some of the most memorable lines in the movie, like that. I love this. My favorite line of his is when he's talking to Ralphie from A Christmas Story, who's a scientist, and he's got that book. It's literally Peter Billingsley, because of course this is a Jon Favreau production, and Favreau, Vaughn, and Billingsley all work with each other on several projects. And my favorite line from him is when he's screaming at the top of his lungs, "Tony Stark built this thing in a cave with a box of scraps," and the scientist is just like, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm not Tony Stark." And Jeff Bridges is just like, "Of course you're not." And like, I know I completely botched that line, but you get the idea. That the way it's read by Bridges. I mean, Jeff Bridges is a great actor, but people forget that Peter Billingsley can act his ass off too. I mean, this is a kid that's not just Ralphie. He's done a lot of other movies besides Christmas Story and all that. But The writers do a good job of contemporizing the origin of Iron Man without taking it over the edge and changing the origin story with unnecessary things like some other origin films tend to do, as well as coming up with that great mix of action and comedy. The action sequences are so well done, and the film has a lot of those really good one-liners scattered across the film that just makes it so work as well as it can, and the visual effects are amazing to look at. This is actually one of the last things Stan Winston did before he passed away. He worked on the metal suits, he worked on the rubber that was used in the film, and helped to work on the Iron Man costume with this mix of CG, and his company did a pretty good job of handling that, as well as a lot of the other visual effects held into the film. The action is so well done. The final climax of the movie, I think, is very well done. There is a lot of tension. There's a lot of things that make it work. It feels very realistic. Like, something like this could actually happen in real life. And that's one of the things I really was impressed by this whole thing. But, nevertheless, we got to talk about the biggest thing that this movie was setting up for. I mean, when most people went to go see this movie, they were not expecting it to be anything more than just another typical superhero movie. It's like, okay, we've seen this done before time and time again. They're going to go ahead, and of course, we're going to get some kind of no, actually, no. I think this was actually one of the first real superhero movies that actually did the post-credit sequence with actually building something for it. Because we've seen post-credit sequences in other superhero movies and other movies, you know, Masters of the Universe, Buckaroo Banzai, a couple of X-Men movies had mid-credit sequences that really didn't amount to anything. But what they set up here at the end of Iron Man is still something that was nowadays we look at it, it's just like, okay, they had a good idea what they were doing, but when they set this up back in May of 2008, you have no idea how much pressure there was to deliver on what they were asking for with this post-credit scene.
Jarvis.
Welcome home, son.
I am Iron Man. You think you're the only superhero in the world? Mr. Stark, you've become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet. Who the hell are you? Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
8 words. I'm here to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. 8 words that we thought at the time was cute. Okay, very ambitious of you to think that this is going to be something that you're going to actually do. Because they've been talking about doing these other movies for a while now, setting up all these different movies to set up into this one big epic adventure that they were going to put together. And even back when this summer happened, there was a lot of skepticism that they were actually going to do it. But the plan was to simply do this. Iron Man was supposed to be the first film of this new universe, and then we were supposed to get the Hulk, the new Incredible Hulk, which comes out later in the summer, and then it was going to be Thor. Then it was going to be Iron Man 2. No, it was Iron Man 2 next, and it was going to be Thor in 2010. Then 2000, I think it was, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was Thor in 2009, Captain America in 2010, and then it was all going to lead up to the Avengers in 2011. Of course, Iron Man became the successful film, and so they added a sequel to that, and so they moved around the dates around. But the Incredible Hulk not underperforming, everyone thought that it was going to put a damper on what they were going to do with this, but what really changed the whole thing was when Disney came in and bought Marvel. I think when Disney bought Marvel the following summer, it essentially said that, oh yeah, they're doing this. And sure enough, what followed over the next 4 years was a ride of very good movies all across the board. I mean, this movie's great. The Incredible Hulk's a great movie. Iron Man 2, not as good as the first one, but still pretty good. Thor, probably the weakest of the bunch, and Captain America, which is one of those ones I like to watch all the time. And then, of course, that led into the Avengers, which the Avengers became, and the Avengers, of course, became the movie that everyone thought wasn't going to happen, and then all of a sudden it did, and it turned out to be one of the great cinematic experiences that you will ever have. And the rest is history. I mean, they spent the rest of that decade of the 2010s at Marvel, like, becoming the star, the big focal movie of the year for the next 10 years, up until the COVID year. I mean, everyone was always building up, like, what was going to happen next, because they were really delivering, and there were more hits than misses in the MCU before COVID. Nowadays, it's more misses than hits, but it is what it is, and I think there's a lot of problems with the MCU in general, which we'll delve into as we go along on this journey here. But yeah, it's crazy to think that this movie, this one little sequence that they did, a lot of people didn't think they were going to do anything with it at first, but then of course all of a sudden when you get a person, somebody like Kevin Feige, and you get a major company like Disney who is willing to spend billions of dollars to accomplish whatever you want to do because they really do believe in what you're trying to do. I mean, that tells you what they were, is that they were really believing that this was going to work, and hopefully it was going to pay off in something big. And sure enough, it eventually did. We got a lot of great movies out of the MCU since this launched, and yeah, you can't say that this was a failure by any means necessary. It was an experiment that worked and did very, very well. And naturally, when Disney purchased Marvel for $4 billion, I think it's definitely paid off for them, because many of the movies that they made have made that back and then some. It was one of the smartest moves Disney could have made at that point. But going back to Iron Man, because I've spent a lot of time talking about this, Iron Man really is one of the best superhero movies ever made because of its great cast, a great contemporized origin story, great visuals, great action, just overall fun. It's a fun, solid movie-going experience, and it's the movie that not only helped to relaunch Robert Downey Jr.'s career and put him back into superstardom in a year where he just had a great, great year, because he would have another movie coming out this summer that was just as good, if not just as good as this. But it puts the Marvel Cinematic Universe on the fast track. I mean, this was the movie that did it, and nobody was really expecting it to, but lo and behold, look at what happened. So yeah, that's Iron Man, and you know, of course it's the summertime, so you're going to have movies that are going to try to counter-program you in any way they can. Here's Sony's attempt to counter-program Iron Man. Here's Maid of Honor.
Tom has his girlfriends.
Oh, I think I picked up yours by accident. Sorry about that.
Gloria. Nice.
Tom has his guy friends.
Not gonna be able to play today in my back.
Come on, Gary. If we don't have a fourth, we're going to end up with Tiny Shorts guy.
Sorry.
Hey, what's happening?
You know that?
No, our friend Paul with longer shorts is coming.
But he only has one best friend.
I'm not going to another one of your father's weddings.
This is the last time. I promise.
You don't act on that pretty soon. I'm gonna make her my number 6.
You got the best of both worlds, Tom.
It's true. I can sleep with whoever I want, but Hannah's been the one constant in my life.
I'm going to Scotland on business for 6 weeks.
6 weeks? What am I going to do without you?
I think you'll be fine. Hello?
Hey, how's the weather in England?
I'm in Scotland.
So it's sunny.
It's 3 in the morning.
So it's dark.
I'm gonna go back to sleep now.
Oh, I hate Scotland.
What's the matter with you today? Maybe there's more to life than just sleeping around.
I don't understand.
I'm not following.
I'm going to tell Hannah. When she gets home, I'm going to tell her that I want to be with her.
I'm engaged. He proposed, and I accepted.
Wow, it's beautiful.
If you're getting married, I'd expect to be your best man. Tom, will you be my maid of honor?
You're maid of honor.
What is it with you, man?
Oh, screw you. Did I forget to mention that this was directed by the same guy that gave us such memorable classics as Leonard Part 6, City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold, and Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles? Okay, you already want me to move on to the next movie, but sadly, this is what we have to deal with here, folks. Patrick Dempsey is a lifelong playboy who falls in love with his best friend, played by Michelle Monaghan, only to have her get engaged. She asked him to be his maid of honor. Which, if you're getting married 6 weeks after you meet somebody, that should be a red flag right there. I don't understand these romantic comedies where, you know, they have to get married immediately. This isn't like Aladdin, where there was literally a law in place where Jasmine had to get married to somebody before her 18th, I think it was her, what was it, her 16th or 18th birthday? I can't remember what it was, but she had to get married before a specific birthday, and there was only a couple of days for her to do that. And, I mean, in this movie, it makes no sense to do that whatsoever. Like, this is, if you're not already turning away from this movie at this point, then clearly I can't help you with this, because my God, this movie is absolutely horrible. And of course, this is being made because Patrick Dempsey found newfound fame on Grey's Anatomy, playing McDreamy, like the stupidest name ever, on a show that's still going on even to this very day. And this movie sucks. This is a terrible movie that wastes too many good talented actors. I've seen Patrick Dempsey be good and stuff. Michelle Monaghan deserves much better than this. You got Sidney Pollack in this movie, the Academy Award-winning director, and you know, he's made great movies in the past, and this was the last thing he did before he died. The last thing he did before he died, and he's playing a father he's playing Patrick Dempsey's father who's entering his 6th wedding with so many different women in this movie. Like, this movie sucks. I don't have anything else to say, but this is a terrible movie. I don't buy into anything that's going on whatsoever. The comedy is lame. Did you expect anything less from the same guy that made Leonard Part 6? Really? So yeah, not much more to say about that one. I mean, that one is too easy to pinpoint that, yeah, this is a terrible film. So let's go ahead and turn it around with our last film here. We have a really good film to end this show on. Let's take a look at Son of Rambow.
That's requests. I was just... skills.
From Sundance to New York, film festival audiences are cheering for the biggest British comedy of the year.
Son of Rambow, take one. Click.
Son of Rambow is a British Stand By Me.
Action!
One of a kind.
I am the Son of Rambow!
It makes you feel like a kid again.
This has been my best day of all time.
Rated PG-13. Starts Friday in select theaters.
Yeah, remember in the 1980s when everyone was so peeved about Rambo because kids were watching this and everyone thought that they were going to turn into violent monsters? Who would have guessed that that Rambo would have made for an uplifting coming-of-age comedy in which you have a young boy during Margaret Thatcher's Britain, which is I guess a thing in this world, but it's a coming-of-age story about 2 schoolboys, one of them played by Will Poulter, who would later go on to star in We're the Millers, and their attempts to make an amateur film inspired by First Blood. This is directed by Garth Jennings, whose last film we looked at of his was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he also did Sing and Sing 2, which surprisingly are really good Illumination movies, one you should definitely check out. And this is another really fun film, too. It's a really good, fun, lighthearted comedy that works really well because you do buy into the characters played by Bill Milner and Poulter, and it's a really fun movie. It's about these 2 kids who are watching this, and they're not watching First Blood and thinking like, okay, we need to go be extremely violent. No, they want to make their own movie version of this, and they're kids making these little movies, little home movies, and it plays very well. It's a very nice, fun little film, and I don't think anybody would have expected that from a film based off of Rambo of all things, and it's a really good movie. It's a really fun, lighthearted comedy, very impressively put together, a well-made film, a very underrated film. I don't think a lot of people really talk about this one, but it's a really good film that definitely deserves a lot more attention than it gets. It's one I recommend checking out. It's a really good movie. It's a really fun film overall. It's great. Son of Rambow, I highly recommend it. Son of Rambow. Rambow! I don't even know why I did that. I don't know why. Every time I see that title, Son of Rambow, all I think to myself is, Son of Rambow! Like, I don't know why. Like, it was like that for me back in the day when I saw that title. But anyway, that's going to wrap this episode of Time About the Movies up. So next time we meet, we'll have 3 more movies to look at here, including Ashton Kutcher and Cameron Diaz starring in the comedy What Happens in Vegas. And then the Wachowski brothers take on Speed Racer. And you would think that would be the movie that would be the highest grossing film new release of the weekend. But no, that was not the case. So that means it must be bad, right? Well, we'll talk about it next time around. But we'll also take a look at David Mamet's Red Belt starring Chiwetel Ejiofor and Tim Allen in a very dramatic role, very different compared to what we used to seeing him in. But we'll take a look at those 3 movies. That'll be coming up tomorrow. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like this, please go ahead and hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell, because you get updates on when new videos come out. And we do post new videos here every day. So with all that said, I'm off. I'll see you guys next time. And until then, as always, take care.